went deep sea fishing, and I was really after something I could mount on the wall. Yeah, I did. I wanted more big old sailfish, you know, spread out his fins and everything, put it on the wall. Threw out my bait, got out there, and I caught a few snapper. Snapper is good eating. It's good eating. I'm not disputing the fact that it has some value, but it's not mountable. You don't go in nobody's house and see a snapper. I was encouraged by the snapper. They are biting. But I wasn't satisfied. Don't become satisfied with something that should only encourage you that you're in the right spot. I wanted the sailfish so that when people came over, I'd have something to point at. Pray for me. Because if you don't have nothing to point out, people think you're lying. When you tell them it's 9 feet long, they say, yeah, it's about 6. But when you got your trophy on the wall, it will shut every mouth you got on this boat. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus couldn't preach. He didn't write a book. He didn't open up a church. He wasn't prophetic. Couldn't even sing, as far as we know. Of all the people that could have been raised from the dead that would have been functional, you could have found somebody better than Lazarus. Why did he raise Lazarus from the dead? Because he wanted something to point at. So that when his haters came along and they doubted the authenticity of his faith and they didn't believe he was the Messiah, Lazarus didn't have to preach. Lazarus didn't have to sing. All Lazarus had to do was sit there and breathe. You need some kind of trophy that proves that he that is in you is greater than he that's after you. Glory to God. If you tweet and put on the hashtag reel it in, we're gonna reel some things in. We're not gonna live and die and shout and fall out and talk in tongues and not produce anything. When Jesus came down to the seashore and saw the disciples who had been fishing all night, he didn't ask them how long had they been fishing. He said, have you caught anything? He didn't ask them, how old are you? He said, have you caught anything? Hope is an expected end. It says when it's all over, I'm going to catch something. I'm going to reel it in. I'm going to preach something. I'm going to build something. I'm going to make something happen. I am not going to live and die and not leave anything in the earth as a sign that I was here. I'm going to build something. I'm going to leave stones as a memorial. I'm going to leave an ark on a hill. I'm going to leave some sort of sign that my children and my children's children will know that when I passed through the world, the Lord was with me. I will not settle. Even if I have to start over, even if it took longer than I expected, even if I have to make payments, even if I have to crawl on my belly, I will not settle. I will not settle. I will not do it. I will not settle. I will fight you every morning. You whip me on Tuesday, you're going to have to whip me on Wednesday. You whip me on Wednesday, I'll see you Thursday afternoon. I will fight you every day. I will not settle. When God comes to speak to Abraham, he comes to speak to Abram because Abram wants to settle. He just wants to settle. He loves God, but he wants to settle. It took too long, too tough, too many oppositions, just wants to settle. Maybe I misunderstood what God said. Maybe it wasn't for me. Maybe I'm not smart enough to do this. Maybe I don't have what it takes. Maybe. People who settle always have a maybe. Maybe I didn't get it right. Maybe he meant this. Maybe he meant for me to do it in the house. Maybe he meant this over here. Maybe he meant it for this. Maybe. It's how you tranquilize your hope. It's how you tranquilize your hope. Because you don't want to deal with the pain of having not attained. So you move the goal to line up with where you are. I jotted down five little notes that I learned from Genesis 17, 14 through 22 that I want to pass on to you. The first one is covenant before circumcision. God gives Abram the covenant before the circumcision. Circumcision is symbolic of the cutting away of the filth of the flesh. It is symbolic of cutting away that which is not essential to be productive. Circumcision is cutting away that is not essential to be reproductive. Now, if you are going to reel it in, you are going to have to cut away that is not essential to be productive. If it's not helping you get there, cut it off. You're not on my team? Snip, a snip, a snippy. Snippy, skippy, snippy. Don't hate you, not mad at you. Just not essential. Got to go. But watch this. The covenant comes before the circumcision. The covenant is the promise. So the promise has come, the promise from God has come to Abram before the circumcision, so that you won't think that the circumcision earned the covenant. So God said, I'm going to make you the promise while you still have no sign of the covenant and you haven't cut away that is not necessary. I'm going to give you the covenant on credit. So you're not circumcising so that you can get the covenant. You got the covenant, and therefore you are circumcising. Oh, God. See, the covenant is the expected end. The circumcision is part of the process. You don't get right so you can get saved. You get saved so you can get right. Let me try to tell them, you don't get right so you can get saved. You get saved so you can get right. If you could get right before you got saved, you wouldn't need to get saved. You got saved so you could get right. That's why when you get saved, you can't praise yourself. It is God and God alone that did the work. So covenant comes before circumcision. I have the contract before I circumcise. I have it in my spirit before I cut off that is not necessary out of my life. If you don't have a hope in your spirit, you don't have a chance of circumcising your flesh. No need of us teaching you no classes on discipline. How are you going to discipline somebody who's not a disciple? You keep coming up with all of these, I got to be more disciplined. No, you need a covenant. You need a promise. You need a hope. You need a goal. Let me tell you something. If you're going to train, if you're going to physically train, you got to train with a goal in mind. You can't be on that treadmill seeing yourself fat. Seeing yourself fat will make you have another piece of cheesecake. You got to have a goal of what you're after, whether you got it or not. You got to have the goal. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying. So the first thing that I wanted to pull out of this text is that circumcision, that covenant comes before circumcision. The second thing I want you to get out of this text is change your name when you change your game. God said, if this is a game-changing moment, then this is a name-changing moment. Don't have a new game with your old name.
Still to come on The Potter's Touch.
If you connect to something that is in total rebellion to where you're trying to go, you spend all of your energy fighting what you're connected to rather than fighting what you're going to. So you don't have the energy to get where you're going because you're spending all your energy fighting with what you're connected to. New encounter and a new walk and a new life, but you're still keeping your old name. Let everybody know this is a game changer, so it's a name changer. A name changer may mean a friend changer. You cannot be who you were and be who you are at the same time. Oh, this is so good. You cannot be who you were and be who you are at the same time. You got to decide. If you're serious about this thing, it's time to change your name. Now, when you change your name, you're saying an outward sign, everything about me is going to line up with what just happened in my life. You were Sarai, now you're going to be Sarah. Your name is going to line up with your destiny. I ought to be able to look at what you put out there and see where you're going. If you're going to be a classy woman, everything about you ought to be classy. Don't hide your class in floozy and then get mad because I don't see it. I shouldn't have to be a prophet. I'm just giving examples for your consideration. I shouldn't have to be a prophet to see where you're going. You ought to dress like it. You ought to walk like it. You ought to talk like it. You ought to stand like it. You ought to interact with it. You ought to relate to it. You ought to be drawn to it. Change everything you got to change to line up with the game you got now. If you are not Slick Willie and you are now Deacon Williams, then get rid of your Slick Willie stuff. Change your Facebook site. Change your clothes. Take Slick Willie down off your logo. It's time. Oh, I lost you in here. That's right. That's right. I'm getting in your business. You're not serious about a new game if you're still walking around with your old name. God is rebranding Abraham. He's rebranding his wife. He's rebranding his life. He says, I want everything about you to line up with where you're going. If you're going fishing, don't wear a suit. Your destiny has to be associated with everything about you. Lest you confuse people about where you're going. How can you get people to follow you if they are confused? You won't have to beat on your chest and say, I'm the man of the house, if you be that. If you stand up and handle your business, everybody in the house will know. They don't want to hear it, Lord. He said, tell you anyway. How in the world can you be secretly pregnant? You might be secretly pregnant a few months, but eventually what's on the inside will show on the outside. If you understand that you can't be secretly pregnant, then you ought to understand that you can't be secretly great. If you are truly great, you won't have to tell me you're great. There's going to be some sign of greatness on you, and after a while, I'm going to tell you, you're great. I'll tell you, when's the baby coming? What's going on? You can't be pregnant and keep it a secret. The outside changes because the inside changes. The covenant comes before the circumcision. The pregnancy comes before the maternity clothes. You're spending all of your energies trying to convince other people of something that you don't believe yourself. So I thought that was important. Then he says to Abram, he says, everything in your house is going to be circumcised. Everything born out of you, everything adopted by you, everything bought by you. He said, I want there to be uniformity in everything in your house. That means connections matter. Connections matter. When you buy into something, everybody connected to you needs to buy into that same thing. He said, if you buy a son, circumcise him. If you rent one, circumcise him. If they stay up under your roof, circumcise him. Everything connected to you has to say what you're saying. I'm not gonna say it, snip, snip. Not coming in, snip, snip. I'm gonna have to cut you off. Because if we're gonna be connected, we gotta be connected. See, if you connect to something that is in total rebellion to where you're trying to go, you spend all of your energy fighting what you're connected to rather than fighting what you're going to. So you don't have the energy to get where you're going because you're spending all your energy fighting with what you're connected to. Connections matter. Am I helping somebody today? He said, everything in your house is going to have to come into alignment. I'm not just talking about kids and families and husbands and wives and all of that. I'm talking about everything, getting unity. Where people often ask me, can I just talk to you for a minute? People often ask me, they say, how do you do that? You preach, you pastor, you write books, you write scripts, you do movies, you do plays, you're doing talk shows. They say, how do you do all of that? To them, it's 7 things. To me, it's 1. See, the commonality between everything I do is communication. When I get through communicating over here, I'm gonna go home and write my book. I'm gonna go communicate over there. I'm gonna do my talk show. I'm gonna communicate over there. You shouldn't have anything in the house of your activities that does not line up with your brand. So if you limit what I'm saying to just talking about people, you're gonna fuss all the way home in the car with your husband talking about that's what's wrong with us now. We're not in agreement. That might be true, but that is the lesser side of a bigger issue. Sometimes you can live by yourself and not be in agreement because there's too many different ones of y'all up under the same roof. Your Facebook says one thing. Your church life says something else. Your street boys know you as somebody else. Your extra girlfriend knows you as something. It's too many of y'all. And watch this, a house divided against itself shall not stand. You keep coming up with all these ideas to do things that are not interrelated. And if they're not interrelated and interconnected, then your creativity is divisive. Device, division. The root of divisiveness is two visions. You are splitting your strength, trying to do too many things. If you're going to be effective, you got to focus. And everything in the house has to be kin, has to be connected. Am I helping anybody?